thumbs?
I got thumbs in both directions.
It's a thumb war,
I got
baby.
2 thumbs.
Warm up your thumbs. Got that thumb war.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, Battlefield 1 has the highest thumbed up trailer in the history of YouTube.
Yeah.
In the history of YouTube. Aaron pointed this out a couple of days ago. And also Call of Duty on the opposite side.
Yep, but it's one of the most thumbed down, I think, game trailers.
So this can come from like a variety of places. Also, it's like perfect like clickbait for a video game website's news story. You know what I mean? Like it sounds great. But let's kind of talk about the reaction to both of these games sort of outside of that a little bit. First of all, let's talk about Battlefield 1. We did a sort of a breakdown after that announcement. You went down and saw some awesome gameplay stuff. We've already talked about that. You can check it out on YouTube and GameSpot. But the reaction to that trailer, were you surprised at all, Aaron, about how refreshing or how into it people were, considering it is, you know, it's a war we've not really seen much of?
Yeah, I think World War I hasn't been done all that well, at least in American cinema. And I was doing a lot of research after that came out. And I noticed there are quite a few British movies, which makes sense. And I think it also hasn't been that explored in video games just because of probably the misconception that the weapons would be fairly boring.
Yes.
So yeah, I gotta say that it caught me off guard. I thought maybe they were gonna go back to World War II or maybe do Korea or Vietnam. It was surprising in a very good way just because now I'm excited. Like, it's a campaign about a war that I don't honestly know a lot about.
Right.
And that's exciting. It means that you have an opportunity to not only enjoy yourself from a shooter perspective, but also, learn something or experience something that maybe you only ever saw in black and white history class films or, to me, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And that is new.
It's weird that you say that, actually, because when I think about playing the original Call of Duty, and like I remember feeling like really upset at the when you like storm the Reichstag and bring up like the Soviet flag and stuff. Like, it's quite an effect. Like, for me as a young sort of teenage boy, like that was how I learned a lot about World War II. In the same way, like Band of Brothers and like Saving Private Ryan, like taught an entire generation what happened on the Normandy beaches who mightn't have known otherwise. Do you think there's anything to be said about that? That like people have this sort of emotional reaction to something when it has actually happened and existed in a way that they don't when we started going into the world of like sci-fi?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when I was pretty young when the first Call of Duty came out, and I remember my dad, whose dad was in the Pacific Theater during World War II, was actually pretty uncomfortable with me playing World War II games. Yeah, because it hit close to home with him. And now I have a brother who's done 3 tours in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan. He's completely fine playing like Battlefield 4, Modern Warfare 3, or whatever. And I think it could hit closer to home, and that's why World War I itself, I'm really excited for the multiplayer. I'm actually pretty excited for I've read about, and like I actually took a class on World War I, and it was because I didn't know much about it.
Oh,
I'm
right,
excited. Really? I actually, the more I think about the single player, it's a cool opportunity to kind of shed light on it, and I'm hoping they don't. Video games play a huge part. I'm not saying I don't like war games. I play a lot of war games, play a lot of shooters, but video games in the modern day play a huge part in how we kind of romanticize war still.
Right.
And like with so many people playing games now, and I'm hoping maybe with this game they'll take the opportunity to kind of show how World War I itself was like, no one knew why. This was the war when we realized we need to stop doing this, and like because World War II was very much more black and white, good versus evil. World War I, there were so many different reasons, like sinking the Lusitania. There was the Archduke Ferdinand assassination. There was the fact that Germany had the plan of attack, the Schlieffen plan, whatever they called it, in like planned out decades in advance before World War I. And I'm interested to see if they can actually use this setting to kind of push a good story, but good story as in like not to make use of all the shit that went down, but maybe kind of shed more light on it, because a lot of people don't know about World War I now. It's overshadowed by World War II in terms of, like I said, like how almost romantic it was.
Yeah. I mean, World War II sort of has culturally its impact. I mean, we just had another Star Wars movie, and that's basically an allegory for World War II. Yeah, it's fascinating to think that, these are, you're right, like film for years, cinema was what sort of emblazoned the cultural impression of what you think about Vietnam and Apocalypse Now and other movies like that, like, Full Metal Jacket and stuff. And that's how we sort of remember these things. And video games have dotted in and out. And I mean, I sort of always felt uncomfortable playing some of the Call of Duty games set in the Middle East, because I thought that there was a sort of an attempt to create the same black and white sort of idea we had of like other old wars, the way we think about old wars in those sort of reductive terms, in a place where that really doesn't necessarily apply. Did you ever guys feel that way about some of the more modern sort of Call of Duty games? And maybe more particular, actually, the Medal of Honor game that came out.
Oh, Warfighter?
Yeah.
I remember I was actually playing that while my brother was in Iraq or something.
Yeah.
So that was,
and you've
that
been
was
in the
weird.
Navy as well. So
I was in the Air Force.
Air Force,
briefly,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, and I don't remember specifics about Warfighter. I remember it being definitely kind of doing that, though, making it more of a us versus them mentality from what I played. I don't know.
I've had more issues with some of the way film has portrayed modern war. I think it's been too much like, raw go America, everybody's evil. And it's sort of undercut the complexity of the Middle East. And to bring that back around, the complexity of the Middle East, although that area of the world's always been complex, a lot of the modern complexity comes from the fall of the Ottoman Empire, from World War I. So going back to Battlefield 1, like you have an opportunity to explore sort of the creation of the modern day situations. Like a lot of the borders on the map in the Middle East right now were just drawn by some people at the end of World War I. They're just like, yep, here's a pen. Yep, that looks good. Let's put a line here. And they grouped together peoples who had no business being grouped together.
I mean, you say Ottoman Empire to most people, they think of something that existed like centuries ago, not less than a century ago.
And that's why people are always saying there's like these what if scenarios if the Nazis won World War II. But if you look back, our world today exists so much because of World War I. Europe would be unrecognizable if we were to look at some other timeline where, the Austrians took Italy or, the Germans actually pushed into Paris like they almost very closely did, but screwed it up because someone made a bad decision from a strategic standpoint. But yeah, that's this setting itself. I'm actually, the more I think about it, the more I'm excited for the single player because the single player, they said there's going to be more like multiplayer in the sandbox structure, which I'm hoping they actually really go for that. And it's not just a selling point, but I'm also really hoping they can tell the stories like the Harlem Hellfighters. That'd be a really cool group to look at and see how it affected them and how they kind of were this undersold story during World War I. I'm excited for that setting for sure.
All right, let's shift perspectives then from the past to the future. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare obviously got the jump on them by about a week or so, I think. The trailer has had some thumbs down. Probably a lot of those have to do with the Call of Duty 4 pack-in deal that they're doing. I mean, that's going to happen, I guess. But do you think maybe people are... Because I was intrigued by Infinite Warfare. I was at least thinking, at least they're trying something new. At least they're not resting entirely on another, slightly near future. Oh, look, this is the same gun you're using now, but now it has a different magic future scope on it or whatever. And thrusting it into a new sort of plane. And hopefully, like you were saying, Aaron, actually making good on it in terms of gameplay and not just having it be a story setting and basically be a normal first-person game. Battlefield 1, when you put the two of them together, now it looks like Battlefield 1 is so much more intriguing. But what do you think about Call of Duty Infinite Warfare? And are you do you think it's a step in the right direction for Activision and Infinity Ward? Or do you think it's not enough? Or are we just being jerks because all we've seen is two trailers? And at least they showed gameplay, kind of.
I think it's a game that's become a little bit trapped by its own success. I think they've been not straying too far from their own formula just because... that's what sells, and they probably have been given marching orders to not change it too much. That's why I'm a little bit worried that this one will just be it'll be another planet, sure, but it's just functionally going to be the same thing. Now, I think it's pretty cool that it's got 1 million thumbs down because to me, if I were making this game, I would go to my bosses and be like, look, this is a mandate from gamers to change. We should try some new things. Check out how many people don't like the fact that this appears to be the same game. I think it's a positive thing, and I think if anything, it could free them from having to do the same thing every year. Now, I think you disagreed and said, and it's probably the truth, it'll just depend on sales. If everybody thumbs it down and it sells the same, then sure, they'll just make another future warfare next year. I mean, I don't know how, there's nothing beyond infinity, but so they kind of put themselves in a corner there.
Yeah, it's. I think you're right. It's success is a double-edged sword, as we sort of talked about a bit last week. And how do you really innovate a series which is selling so well, even if it is dipping a little bit? Looking ahead to the future even more, you got to say that if Battlefield 1 is what we're talking about now, then the chances are the next Battlefield is probably going to stay around that period of time. You'd imagine like, oh, that's the perfect opportunity for them to roll back into World War II and not instantly be stuck. Like, I wonder, it's sad to be talking about what they're going to do next after these, but I wonder if, I guess it'll all happen on the success of this, whether or not there's enough like gameplay change to make it worthwhile. Mike, what do you think of Infinite Warfare?
Yeah, I'm really hoping, because I mean, I think in the way they revealed the game is actually kind of telling. I mean, it seems like DICE and EA showed us a lot more of Battlefield 1 than Activision Infinity Ward did. Like in terms of gameplay, or at least I saw more gameplay.
Well, you saw more gameplay. I think their trailer was twice as long as what the public saw.
Right,
Battlefield 1,
sure.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, I'm hoping it's not just like a futuristic skin. I'm hoping they actually make use of it, because I don't know, it'd be cool to, I don't know, this is spitballing. What if you had a multiplayer map that you're warping between different parts that had like different time travel differently? There's different gravity in different areas, because there's zero grav combat according to the trailer, and they're showing it. But how much of that is just going to be what was at the beginning of Ghost, where you're floating and shooting people just like you are in Call of Duty? I want them to actually use the setting to kind of propel what they're doing forward, rather than just make the game and then throw a futuristic paint on it and just say, you know, like what you said, this is what an AK-47 would look like in 50 years or something. Yeah. I don't want that. I want them to actually kind of tell a story, or use like do cool new things with multiplayer they couldn't do like in Black Ops 3, like because the wall running was just, you know, like reminded me of Titanfall, and then the shooting reminded me of every other Call of Duty game. I want them to actually take the step that they're purporting to be with this trailer. I'm hoping it's actually futuristic and not just painted to look like it.
I mean, the other thing as well is that like you can have a contemporary war game be really good and evocative, like Call of Duty Modern Warfare was, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. You just have to have like a very well written game with like interesting set pieces, and I feel like we've had that in like Black Ops 1, for instance. I thought I had that, and I think the 2 Modern Warfare games did. Personally, I haven't really connected with any of like Advanced Warfare, any of those. They were sort of like fun little diversions, like an action movie is. But like I still remember so much of Call of Duty 4. You know, maybe it's just a case of we look at these games at this really superficial level, and actually when we get to play them, you know, that's the time for these studios to be able to deliver what they're actually trying to do. And you know, maybe we judge this game too early because we expect it to do so little.
Sure.
But then they've also been doing that for a couple of years. So.
Although, if anything, they've set themselves up in an environment where they could do amazing things. Again, like Mike said with Gravity, like give us the first multiplayer map set on a spherical asteroid where I throw a grenade and hit myself in the back of the head if I'm not careful, you know? Or like, again, give me a space battleship where the multiplayer combat takes place both inside and outside of the ship.
Right, yeah.
I mean, there's things that, again, going back, there's things that Battlefront did a long time ago that we haven't seen since, and we haven't seen done better and in this level of detail. So, you know, again, if you're just going to have the future AK-47 and a flat map with Earth's gravity,
space people,
yeah, like then you
like
really
Doom.
Haven't innovated at all.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and find out. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the two of them. Haven't been excited for Call of Duty in a little while, I feel, and I am actually excited about this one. Battlefield 1, obviously, just the sort of anticipation of what that could be is obviously very tantalizing as well. Mike, what about yourself? What are you sort of looking forward to when you put these two games side by side?
I am looking forward to both of them as well. I think more so Battlefield 1, just mainly because that series hasn't been where I want it to be for a long time. Right. So I think every time it comes out or they show it off, I'm hoping it'll get back to what I loved about Battlefield. These, these prolonged, more multiplayer matches with more substance, because Call of Duty has become this Twitch gameplay, which I like. It reminds me of not in the same way that Counter-Strike did, but I love Counter-Strike because it's a very specific kind of shooter, and I love Overwatch because it's pulling from a lot of them, but I'm hoping that Battlefield 1 does add more substance to returns. They say they return to their roots. I hope they return to the right parts. And Infinite Warfare I'm curious about, but Battlefield 1 is the one that kind of got me really excited.
Yeah. Aaron, you're a big fan of Battlefield. You cover Battlefield games here at GameSpot all the time. What are you looking forward to out of two of these?
Battlefield 1 takes place at a point in history where a lot of warfare was not figured out. And I think that's an exciting setting. Like I said, they started with airplanes where they were just spotting, and then, some bag of dicks brought a shotgun with them. And then another guy brought a shotgun, then another guy brought a machine gun, and next thing you know, you've got aerial duels. They invented a tank. It drove at 3 miles per hour. So you could just step out of the way if you really wanted to. And they just invented it to take on machine guns.
Right.
They didn't really know how to use it. I think that's exciting. It's exciting to set a game at a point in history where it's not like future AK-47. It's we don't know what an AK-47 is, but let's try making a rifle semi-automatic and see what happens.
Yeah.
So that, to me, is a fun setting and still allows for a lot of the weapon customization that they'll sneak it in that they have in Battlefield already.
All right. Well, in any case, it looks like we're getting to interesting-looking military first-person shooters this year. Let us know, though, what you think. What are you most looking forward to? Call of Duty, Infinite Warfare, or Battlefield 1? Put your thoughts in the comments below. Our good friends in the Twitch chat have all been screaming at me for Call of Duty Disney Infinity Warfare to maybe solve those two problems at the same time. Maybe not. Probably not. Maybe that's what happens.
They're just going to kill off
Activision just
right
bought
away.
the Disney. They bought Disney. It's all over.
Yeah,
Infogrames bought Ubisoft and then bought Disney and then bought Activision. And they're going to merge all together.
We're done for. It's all syndicated.
Yeah, Rayman in your Call of Duty video game.